So I'm very, very thrilled and ecstatic that the guest that you see to the left of me, today has accepted our invitation, right? I'm, of course, talking to you guys about Dominique Anglade. And, I can't go through a whole list of accolades or accomplishments because we'd be here for a while. But I could start by telling you that she has extensive, experience in the private sector before going into politics, right? She was first elected as an MP for Saint-Henri-Sainte-Anne in 2015. And she was Minister of Economy, Science and Innovation, the Minister responsible for digital strategy, before then being appointed Deputy Prime Minister of Quebec, right? She was re-elected in 2018, right? And in May 2020, she actually became the first woman to hold the position of the leader of the Liberal Party of Quebec, right? And became the leader of the official opposition at the National Assembly, right? So with great pleasure. And I'd like to thank her once again for having accepted our invitation, that I'm going to turn things over to Madame Anglade. Bienvenue, ravi de vous avoir.
Merci beaucoup de l'invitation, c'est vraiment très apprécié. Je suis vraiment contente d'être avec vous. J'allais faire ça français, anglais. I'll answer your questions as we go. I feel that I'm like really far away from you, and I wanted to go down here and do this from down here. But is it better if I stay here? C'est comme vous voulez. Pas encore d'opinion. Ok, on va commencer comme ça, puis je verrai par la suite. I hope I'm not going to fall though. C'est la seule affaire. Mais peut-être que je vais commencer par me présenter. Puis après ça, j'ai la capacité de parler très, très longtemps. So I don't want to talk too much. I really want to have a conversation with you. Because when we talk about identity, the most important thing is a conversation we're having. It's not so much about listening to people. It's how people feel and how they say they are impacted by those questions around identity. Puis merci beaucoup, Ara, d'avoir parlé de la question environnementale aussi, parce que tout l'enjeu des changements climatiques et de ce qui se passe dans notre monde, ça nous touche directement et ça va nous toucher dans les questions d'identité également. Absolument. Puis j'ai aimé toute la séquence. L'identité, c'est l'identité de genre, l'identité, évidemment, nos autochtones, les Noirs, les Blancs, les différents pays dans le monde, tout ce que l'on voit présentement, la question du racisme systémique, toutes ces questions-là qui sont vraiment essentielles. So let me first start by introducing myself. Je suis née au Québec de parents haïtiens. Mes deux parents étaient haïtiens, ils sont venus s'installer au Québec. And the reason why I was born and raised in Quebec is because my father was in political exile from Haiti. Et donc j'ai grandi dans une famille très politisée où j'avais un père qui animait beaucoup de discussions ici au Québec, qui était un des cofondateurs de l'UQAM, et une mère, elle, qui était très engagée dans la communauté, very involved in women's rights, very engaged in the community. Et je pense que c'est entre ces deux pôles-là que moi, j'ai développé ma propre manière de réfléchir à la question de l'implication et de l'engagement. My father went to, when I was very, very young, he was sent to jail in Haiti. And I remember being brought up in Montreal, in Notre-Dame-de-Grâce, and being at the daycare. And I was 4 years old, and I was telling all my friends in school, my father went to jail. And people were really getting nervous about this. And I remember my parents being called and said, Dominique is telling stories about her father having gone to jail. Puis je disais à mes parents, puis je disais à tout le monde, je disais, pas juste mon père qui a été en prison, tous ses amis ont été en prison. Pourquoi? Parce qu'il y avait un engagement très politique. On fréquentait des gens qui étaient très engagés dans différents pays à ce moment-là. When I was 14, my parents decided to go back to Haiti, so I went back to Haiti for 3 years before coming back to Quebec, where I pursued engineering studies at Polytechnique. Et à Polytechnique, j'étais très impliquée dans les organisations, les associations étudiantes, très impliquée dans différents mouvements. Je suis partie travailler en Ontario, je suis partie travailler aux États-Unis avant de revenir au Québec. Puis après ça, je suis retournée aller vivre en Colombie-Britannique pendant quelques années avant de revenir au Québec. Pour moi, la question d'identité, elle se pose tôt. When you are the daughter of immigrants, you ask yourself, you're Haitian, you're Quebecer, you're Canadian, like the whole question of personal identity. And there's one author that I really recommend, c'est Amin Malouf. Et Amin Malouf m'a fait comprendre la chose suivante, il m'a fait comprendre à quel point tes appartenances, là, elles sont toutes variées. Vous avez toutes, chacun d'entre vous, vous avez une expérience qui vous est propre, qui vous est personnelle. Vous avez un parent d'origine chinoise, une mère d'origine vietnamienne, vous êtes né ici, vous fréquentez des gens qui viennent de différents milieux, etc. C'est tout ça, toutes ces appartenances-là sont correctes, mais vous avez votre propre identité. Vous n'avez pas à simplifier votre identité parce que quelqu'un veut vous mettre dans une case. Ça, c'est la richesse de ce que nous sommes collectivement. Et je pense que ce message-là doit passer, doit être colporté. On a besoin d'avoir une société qui soit plus inclusive, mais pour qu'elle soit plus inclusive, il faut quand même qu'on arrive à se parler, à se comprendre, puis à se dire les choses. Very often I say that naming a problem is really recognizing the issue so we can really have a right conversation with people. Et je pense que toute la question par rapport, par exemple, au racisme systémique, toute la question des enjeux autochtones, il faut pouvoir avoir ces conversations-là pour qu'on puisse passer par-dessus les mots puis commencer à travailler ensemble vers des réconciliations. Donc moi, je suis très, très favorable, évidemment, à tous les échanges, à tous les dialogues. Et and this is going to be even more crucial if we are to face together the biggest challenge that we have in the 21st century, which is a climate situation. The climate situation is the biggest challenge we have. Yes, we have issues here in Quebec, but if we don't participate in the solution, we're not going to save our planet. Et je pense que ce message-là doit aussi être entendu, et je pense que nous, ici, comme Québécois, on a une solution à apporter. Ne pas se mettre la tête dans ça puis se dire que cet enjeu-là, c'est ensemble qu'on va être capable de le régler. Doesn't matter where you come from, it doesn't matter what you believe in at the end, because we all need to work towards that goal. Peut-être une chose que j'aimerais partager avec vous. Vous voyez des politiciens tout le temps à la télévision, 3 secondes, 5 secondes, 6 secondes ici, mais les gens, ils s'engagent en politique parce qu'ils croient en quelque chose. Parce que fondamentalement, là, ils croient en quelque chose. The reason why I get up in the morning, every single day, I get up and I'm passionate about what I do is because I want to make sure that every child that is born in Quebec, doesn't matter where they're from, doesn't matter the color of their skin, doesn't matter what parents they have, they can achieve their fullest potential. That's my goal in life. I think that an ideal society is where everybody can achieve its fullest potential. Et ça, c'est ma motivation première tous les matins quand je me lève. Je suis aussi maman de 3 enfants, donc c'est une vie chargée. Puis je vous dirais que cette motivation-là, c'est de se dire qu'on a besoin d'avoir une société qui soit plus juste, qui soit plus égalitaire, et que le Québec soit un phare dans le monde, qu'on puisse inspirer les autres nations, les autres endroits dans le monde, à regarder ce que l'on est capable de faire de mieux ici. Puis c'est pour ça que moi, je m'engage en politique. As I said earlier, I could talk forever. Really, I'm capable of doing that. Mais moi, j'aimerais vraiment vous entendre. J'aimerais vraiment que vous me posiez des questions. J'aimerais vraiment que vous me dites ce qui vous préoccupe, ce qui vous dérange, les sujets que vous aimeriez aborder pour qu'on puisse avoir un véritable échange ensemble. Et j'espère qu'on apprenne à mieux se connaître aujourd'hui. Alors voilà, je vous donne la parole, Ara.
Bon. Questions, folks. I'm going to be going around, so.
Okay, this one thing. I'm afraid I'm just going to fall down that thing. I'm going to. Is it okay if I'm here? Yes. Yeah. Okay. Merci beaucoup.
Folks, it's one person to break the ice. After that, I'm sure we're going to get going. So.
If not, I can choose a person.
You would make a great teacher.
Bonjour. J'espère que vous allez bien.
Oui, oui.
J'aimerais juste savoir, c'est quoi vos positions sur la loi 21? Vous n'êtes pas obligé de répondre.
Ah ben moi, je vais répondre à toutes les questions qu'on va me poser.
Okay, parfait.
Alors, il n'y a pas de problème, il n'y a pas de tabou. Vous pouvez poser des questions qui sont plus personnelles, qui sont plus professionnelles, qui sont plus qui vous dites, oh non, I'm not going to ask this question, you know, it's going to look weird. Ça, c'est la question que je veux entendre, OK? Donc, il n'y a pas de gêne ici, là. Il n'y a vraiment pas de tabou. Loi 21. Alors, ma formation politique a voté contre la loi 21, mais je prends un recul par rapport à la loi 21. C'est évident qu'on veut que l'État soit laïque. C'est-à-dire que l'État, dans les décisions qui sont prises à l'Assemblée nationale, dans les lois qui sont passées, que ce ne soient pas des lois qui soient dépendantes du caractère religieux, peu importe la religion. Donc, le volet de la laïcité, parfaitement en faveur avec la notion de laïcité de l'État. Et ça fait des années, de toute façon, qu'au Québec, il y a des décisions qui se prennent qui n'ont rien à voir avec le religieux. Là, on a un enjeu avec le projet de loi 21, c'est qu'il dit, pour certains groupes d'individus, dans certains cadres, on va considérer que dans les écoles, par exemple, les gens n'ont pas à porter certains signes religieux. Puis c'est certains professeurs, c'est les enseignants, c'est pas tout le monde. Puis là, on crée différentes classes de citoyens. Puis c'est là notre enjeu par rapport à la loi 21. D'autant plus qu'elle n'est pas appliquée, par exemple, dans le système privé. D'autant plus qu'avec les arrêtés maintenant, c'est pas appliqué non plus dans les écoles, dans le système anglophone. Là, on crée une espèce de deux Québec. Donc, ce que l'on dit par rapport à ça, donc on a voté contre, mais ce que l'on dit surtout, c'est qu'une démocratie, ça fonctionne comment? Tu votes une loi, les gens ont le droit de poursuivre la loi, et c'est au juge à ce moment-là de décider puis de trancher. Donc, nous, ce qu'on pense, c'est que cette loi devrait pouvoir passer le test des tribunaux, d'où l'idée de ne pas renouveler la clause d'un obstant. Enfin, c'est un peu compliqué, là, mais de dire qu'elle devrait aller devant les tribunaux pour que les gens puissent dire oui ou non. Est-ce que le projet de laïcité, tel qu'il est, c'est vraiment la manière de procéder et de faire? Voilà. Merci à vous.
Hi.
Hi. Where is she? Here you are. Okay.
Do you believe that there's a systemic racism in Quebec?
Yes, because it is. It does exist. It does exist. What is systemic racism? It's just you. What's your name? Samantha. Samantha, you have biases. I have biases. We all do. But sometimes those biases repeat themselves. And towards certain communities, it becomes systemic. That's why you end up having people that are colored or people that are from indigenous background that are arrested 10 times more than other people. Not recognizing the issue is not going to make it go away. Saying it doesn't exist, it exists everywhere, but not in Quebec. Not saying the word is not like, it's not going to help anybody. I really believe that to fix it, so I'm an engineer by training, so I really believe that naming the problem is the first step towards fixing the problem. Like I like fixing problems. I think you have to name this. So it exists, it's documented. When the police itself says that it exists, I mean, like the police, les ordres professionnels, la Commission des droits de la personne, they realize it exists. So again, I'm really against the fact that people say, oh, we're not going to say that it exists, therefore it's going to disappear, or therefore we're still going to work on the issue. But if you don't recognize an issue, you can't work on it. That's really my strong belief. Merci, Samantha.
Who's next? Hands. There's got to be more that we need to talk about, folks.
Oui, alors il y a une question là-bas.
Behind me.
Je vous jure, hein, je vais venir vous voir avec des questions. Je vous regarde là.
Oh, hi. I hope you're doing well.
What's your name?
My name is Edgar.
Edgar.
Yeah. So right now I'm doing an ethical challenge class, right? And one of the ethical challenges we learn is racism identity, right? And you talked about your background before reaching here in Montreal, right? So I always wanted to learn this since I observe it a lot in a lot of immigrants here in Quebec. It's basically losing your identity to adapt to your surroundings. Have you ever had concern when you were young that, hey, I'm losing my culture? Because personally, I kind of lost my language as well. So I find it like weird that you have to lose your identity to excel in another culture.
Very good question. Yeah, very good question, Edgar. Thank you very much. I really don't believe that you have to lose your identity to be part of another culture. I think you can keep your background and do the same and integrate in society in general. I don't think it's either or. Honestly, I think it's to some degree, it's the wrong, but not your question, but the wrong way to look at it, because my parents were Haitian. I speak Creole. I spoke Creole to my parents. That did not prevent me from, well, they spoke French too, but that didn't prevent me from learning like the common language, le français au Québec, etc. I think it becomes an issue if you feel you have to choose. That's the issue. I think that sometimes in order for you to integrate in some group, you feel like, I'm not going to say that I'm different. But your difference is the richness. That's where it comes from. The notion that the difference is a problem and that we should not talk about it is the issue. If you're different, it takes more effort to integrate. But if you do integrate, then you bring a whole lot of richesse, wealth to the people you're dealing with. Je vais vous donner un exemple. When I started working, I was 22 years old as a full-time person at Procter & Gamble in Ontario. I was four times a minority. I was a young, female, francophone, black woman in Ontario. And I remember that they were telling me that I was going to be the head of a department of about 100 people. And I was completely different from my department. They were all males. They were all like 44. Back then, I thought they were old. 44 years old. And they would be looking at me thinking, who is she? And that's how they were looking at me. And I thought to establish credibility, I had a long way because I was their boss. Like, how was I going to be able to establish credibility with them? And I sat down with every single one employee. I sat down with every single one of them, and I had a conversation with them. And I said, this is where I come from. Where do you come from? What's your background, etc. And at the end, some people said, she's not that bad. I can work for her. I still remember this guy. He said, Dominique, I like you. I'm going to work for you, even if you are a woman. I said, well, thank you, even if I'm a woman, But this really taught me that there was a big barrier ahead of me. But if you eliminate that barrier, if you sit down with people, you break those barriers, the relationship is so much greater. So I think you have to value this. So I don't think you have not to speak a language in order to adapt. I think you can do absolutely both, and I think that's the way to go. Merci.
Who's next?
Une question ici.
Yeah.
Ouais.
Great.
It's going to be a good question.
I'm not going to the gym this week. I'm all good. Yeah.
Bonjour.
Bonjour. Okay. My question is, do you believe that police brutality is an issue in Quebec?
Do I believe that police brutality is an issue in Quebec? So what's your name?
Victoria.
Victoria. Thank you, Victoria. Well, I think we have issues. I think we have issues. I don't want to say that it's generalized. But I think that we've seen some cases where you can really ask the question. You can ask yourself the question about profiling. You can ask yourself the question about the reaction that the police has. But again, I also believe that we can all work together towards facing those issues. I believe that we talk a lot about police. We see a lot of issues with gangs right now. People dying that are really your age, being killed. And I think we should invest as much effort in the police as we should be investing in prevention, in community, in different communities. Because we need to do both. I think it is critical that we do both. I am from the riding of Saint-Henri-Sainte-Anne, where two, you don't like pictures? Oh, no, there was a flash. There were two young, one was 19, one was 21, that were killed. So when you have to write a letter to the mother who lost her son, you really have to think about all the implications of that. Now, you talk about police brutality. There's also that part of it. But we're not going to solve the problem by blaming people. We're just going to solve the problem if we all sit down together and we recognize that there is systemic racism, that there is profiling, that we need to work with the younger, with prevention. I mean, that's how we're going to fix those issues. I really believe that. Merci, merci beaucoup de ta question. There's another question next to her, but there's another one here. Yeah, Jim, you know. You don't want to overdo it.
Cette semaine, on a appris que le cours d'éthique et culture religieuse va être changé pour un cours sur la nationalité québécoise ou quelque chose comme ça.
Ouais.
Pensez-vous que c'est un bon move ou pensez-vous que ça va nous comme setback
Je sais, moi, j'ai des enfants qui ont suivi le cours d'éthique et culture religieuse. Il n'y a pas de doute dans ma tête qui peut être visité puis qui peut être amélioré. Ça, il n'y a pas de doute dans ma tête, mais les enfants vont être les premiers à le dire d'ailleurs. Maintenant, de la manière dont tu le fais, il faut que tu impliques les gens, il faut que les professeurs soient outillés, il faut que ce soit encadré, il faut que les gens se sentent interpellés par ça. Il y a la question aussi de c'est quoi un bon citoyen, comment tu te comportes sur les réseaux sociaux, etc. Je pense que ces enjeux-là sont effectivement importants et qui devraient être abordés quelque part. Donc, il y a de bonnes choses que l'on peut faire avec ça. Maintenant, tout est dans le comment. Ça va être fait. Je ne suis pas de celle qui dit « Ah non, c'est la fin du monde si on change, etc. » Non, mais dites-moi qui va être impliqué, comment on va le faire, comment les gens vont être interpellés, quelles sont les nouvelles matières qu'on doit mettre de l'avant. Puis il ne faut pas que ce soit un truc politique, là, dans le sens partisan. Il faut que ce soit quelque chose qui aide tout le monde, dans le fond, à avoir de meilleurs citoyens au bout du compte. Par contre, il y a un projet de loi, présentement, qui m'énerve beaucoup. C'est le 92. Je ne sais pas si vous en avez entendu parler. On revise l'histoire de famille, mais c'est sur la communauté LGBTQ est particulièrement touchée, notamment les personnes trans, qui, pour officiellement devenir trans, en fait, devenir de sexe opposé, si vous voulez, doivent avoir une chirurgie physique. Ça, c'est véritablement un problème. Et ça, c'est un net recul. Je ne sais pas s'il y en a qui vont vouloir aborder ce sujet-là, mais ça me préoccupe beaucoup.
On avait Martine Delvaux ici avant vous aujourd'hui. L'essayiste féministe très bien connue au Québec, elle l'a abordé le sujet ce matin, donc c'était très intéressant.
Ouais. Mais this is really problematic.
Allô, what's your opinion?
But no.
Oh, Alexia.
Alexia.
Yeah. What's your opinion on needing a vaccination to do certain activities, and do you think it's a problem for those who don't want to get vaccinated?
For doing certain activities?
Yeah, like for example, like just to come into the auditorium, we needed one. Do you think that's a problem and against certain rights?
Yeah. Well, it's a pandemic. So I'm in favor of people getting vaccinated because we're in a pandemic and we have one way of getting out of this situation is vaccination. And the reason why things are getting better is because you have a high level of the population that is actually vaccinated. That's how we're getting better. There's no other path. And if we want to keep our liberties, this is very theoretical. If you go to some countries where they don't have vaccine, there's no liberties. People are dying. Like they're living with the virus, they're dying from the virus. So we have the opportunity of getting vaccinated for free. And it's not like you're a guinea pig or anything like that because it's been proven now. And you have every day you have more studies showing the impact of vaccination. So I think we should follow science in general. That's my strong belief. I think we should follow science and have people vaccinated. Now, I understand that some people disagree with that. I understand that some people don't believe in the vaccine. I also see a lot of people being now in the hospital saying, I should have known better and I should have gotten my vaccine. There's enough science around this right now that people should get vaccinated. That's my strong belief.
What's your opinion on Bill 96?
So, tell me your name.
Alex.
Alex. So, Bill 96. So, first of all, I'd like to say that common language is French, and I'm all in favor of reinforcing the French language, supporting people for speaking French, generally speaking. There are 200 articles in the Bill 96, so many amendments that need to be made, specifically when it comes to the rights of people, specifically when it comes to the rights of English community, and making sure that those rights are protected. So a number of amendments that need to happen. What I don't like about the whole situation is that we are building, it always feels like it's Anglos versus Francos, and it's always this constant fight that I really don't like, because when I speak with the English-speaking community, all in favor of making sure that French is supported, and you have the French speakers are saying all we want is make sure, like we have common goals, but every time you feel that there is this tension. And I was hoping, but it's not happening that way, but I was hoping that we could have like a dialogue that is more constructive, but you have people that love to say, you know, I said I don't want to do too much partisan politics here, but if the leader of the government doesn't help people to reconcile, to reconciliate, for sure it's not helpful. For sure it's not helpful. So I believe there are a number of amendments that need to be made. I believe that we should all work together in order to make sure that French stays strong in Quebec, because I think it's our common language, and it is a beautiful thing, and doesn't prevent people from learning other languages. J'ai 3 enfants à la maison. Mes enfants, évidemment qu'ils parlent le français. C'est la langue que je parle avec eux, mais ils ont appris la langue de leur père, qui est l'allemand, puis ils ont appris l'anglais. Puis, je veux dire, we can do it all. And to go back to what Edgar, I think, was saying about choosing a language, etc., etc., I believe that it's a strength that we have, that we're able to speak French in Quebec. I think it's something that is extremely positive. I think we should build on that in a very positive way, but it doesn't have to alienate other people. We can do both. I would love to say yes. I would love to say yes. We shall see. I'm an optimistic person at heart, but we'll see what happens. Merci.
Hi again. My next question is kind of about that. What do you think about Legault's plan to reduce the number of places in Anglophone colleges?
You know, it's. I don't think this is really the main way to think about it. You see, I believe that, again, the French language, in the recommendations we had in my party, we made 27 recommendations. You can go and read them. C'est ma langue commune, le français. You can go and read the 27 recommendations. And we had recommendations around the cégep anglophone. But in order to do this, we sat down with the different leaders. And we said, what is the right approach? How would you go about doing this? And they gave us their recommendation. We sat down with them in order to bring forward those proposals. So, again, I believe there's some changes that would need to happen. We'll see what happens. The one thing that I'm definitely not in favor of is the idea of telling a 17, 18, 19, 20-year-old person where they should be going for their schooling. I don't think this is the right approach. I don't think we should be doing this. And I don't believe that it's going to give the results that we expect if we decide to go down this path. I certainly hope that the government understands that. We just finished the hearings, like everybody came into commission and presented their perspective on this. Number of people that should go to Anglophone CEGEPs versus Francophone CEGEPs, etc. We just finished the hearings, so I hope the government is not going to go further down the idea of imposing that bill to CEGEPs. But again, I'm optimist. I'm trying to be optimistic about the whole thing.
Anybody else? Yep.
It's a bit unrelated, but I know that all over Quebec, and especially Montreal, we have a slight rise in gun violence. And I was just curious if Quebec had any plans to combat that, essentially.
Good question. Yes, there is an increase in gun violence, and we should be controlling the guns much more than what we're doing today. So a couple of things. This is not only... it's not only Quebec, because guns don't have borders, right? So it's the other provinces, it's the federal government, it's everybody. And I think we should be stricter, generally speaking, whether it's the provincial, the federal, we should be stricter around gun controls. So I think we should go further than what we're doing today, for one thing. The second thing, I'm going to go back to what we were saying earlier on around gangs in general. It's all fine. You'll always have criminals in society. There is a place where people can make money very, very fast, and a lot of money very, very fast. You will always find people. So you want to make sure that you control that. But at the end of the day, what I think is even more important is how much you invest in prevention. COVID has done a number of things. It has isolated people. The community workers that we used to have don't have the means. They didn't necessarily have the means before. They certainly don't have the means now. We are missing people everywhere. The people from the community groups move to other jobs, leaving the community groups without enough support. And that's creating an issue in terms of prevention as well. So I really believe that we should be investing a lot more in prevention than we were even before COVID, especially now. And violence is not only something with guns, it's violence, it's domestic violence. It's violence in social media, it's intimidation, it's going to be Halloween next week. Remember what happened in Halloween last year in Quebec City? People were killed. So all these violences, there's nothing that's going to help more than prevention and very important, mental health. Mental health is something that, as the governments in the past have not invested enough in. Mental health should be treated the same way we talk about, the same way we treat physical health as well. And we don't do this. On fait pas ça. On considère pas que c'est aussi important. Mais mental health has a huge impact on violence as well. Ça, c'est un autre élément. Moi, je pense que ça devrait définitivement être universel.
Anybody else?
D'autres questions?
There we go. I'm going to go up first, and then I'm going to come back down.
Yeah, do that.
So you say that that mental health is very important, but yet, sorry.
Donne-moi ton nom, puis après ça.
Leila.
Leila, okay, parfait.
So you say that mental health is very important, but sometimes when you when you try to get mental health, like in clinics and in CLSC, there's oftentimes a wait of up to a year to see a therapist or a psychiatrist or anyone. What do you plan on doing about that?
A year ago when the COVID, so thank you, Leila, for your question, because I think it's really, really important. I'm pretty sure every single one of you knows somebody that has a problem with mental health, or if you don't have it, like you're fighting personal issues yourself. And we don't talk enough about that, and we don't act enough. Il y a 1 an, j'ai déposé un projet de loi. Projet de loi qui dit, everybody that want to have access to a clinic, that have access to a service, can have access to a service right away. The reason why there is a wait is also because there is a private sector and a public sector. So you're waiting in a CLSC from a public sector, but if you go to the private sector, you could also get the services that you need. But it's really not well orchestrated. If you break your leg, it doesn't matter which hospital you're going to go to, they're going to be treating you because you have a broken leg. Mental health can always wait, and that's the paradigm that we need to change. In order for us to do this, we need to make it a national priority. We need to say, this is something that we can consider as important as a broken leg. And when I say universal access, it means that it's about $500 million every year that the government has to invest in order to make it happen. Premier Legault has decided not to go ahead with that. But I believe this is something that we should be definitely investing in. And also, when you talk about mental health, it's not the same thing for everybody. If you want to reach out to the student community, well, there are different ways, different approaches. You have young students that came up with some applications that are really interesting. People feel more comfortable using those applications. I think we should also listen to the different generations and making sure that we have tools that are really focused towards their needs in particular. So that's where I stand on mental health.
Le parent pauvre du portfolio de santé publique. C'est ça?
Prévention et santé mentale, ce sont les parents pauvres de notre système de santé qui est très hospitalo-centrique.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm going to plug the festival. Dr. Horatio Arruda is here tomorrow morning. You can come back and ask the same question. All right? Okay. We had somebody down here.
Hi. How are you going to, what measures are you trying to take to prevent mental health issues and, example, depression in younger people such as teenagers or CEGEP students?
What are the things that we're trying to bring forward?
To prevent, like, quality of life, to try and help them to prevent these mental health issues.
I believe it's like catching it at the very beginning when people have access. The issue right now is you have people that are more forward-coming with those issues, but they're not getting the support that they need. So I talk to different groups that have good ideas, but as an elected official, what I can do is to really set a priority. I can really say, okay, these are the different initiatives. We're going to finance all those initiatives. Those initiatives are going to target students in particular. They're going to be dans le réseau, là, dans les écoles directement. They're going to be able to really answer to those needs. But I cannot come up with programs myself. The programs are being done by the community groups, by the people on the ground. What I can do is really set the direction and say, we're going to be financing $500 million of those programs, and they're going to be reaching out to people. I talked to 2 students that were organizing, we're talking about apps, but if you feel that you have issues, who can you talk to? And you don't want to have to call somebody. Can you just type different things? Somebody's going to answer via an application. That's going to help you through that process. I thought the idea was really good, but they need to get financing. But in order to get financing, they need to have a direction for a government that this is going to be a priority. So I'm really supporting those initiatives. I haven't had much success right now because the government doesn't see it as a priority as it should be. But this is where politics matter. Like this at the end. This is where people can make a decision as to what party they're going to support and what party they're not going to support. I believe that mental health should be a national priority. I really do.
I know you briefly mentioned it earlier, but I wanted to know what your thoughts were on Bill 2 concerning trans people.
Did I say Bill 92 earlier instead of Bill 2? You just reminded me of that. Merci de poser la question. So I said Bill 92, but it's not Bill 92. It's Bill 2 that was just presented last week. Where do I start? It's really hard to understand how the government can come up with this idea that the definition of a person that is a transgender is it has to be a physical change. I'm sure many of you know people that from the LGBTQ2+ community, and it's a lack of understanding of what people that are transgender are going through. It's a lack of understanding of the community in general. It's a lack of compassion. And for somebody that has to come out and say, you know, okay, I'm coming out and I'm a transgender person, you can't ask this person to keep coming out every single day of their life, because that's what the bill, and if it is adopted the way it is, will mean is that people will constantly have to explain like who they are from a sexual identity perspective. So I don't think you can relate the operation, the physical change with the fact that somebody is transgender or not. I think it's completely lack of understanding of what it is. I don't know how they came up with that. Honestly, it's mind-boggling. I just don't know how they came up with that. Is it because they did not consult at all and they came up with it? Or is it because they did consult and they didn't understand anything at all and then they came up with it? I just don't understand how you can come up with this. So to answer your question, I am completely against that. Completely. I said it on Facebook. I said it on in the newspaper. I mean, yeah, there you go. Here's my opinion.
Okay, coming across. Ali's a frequent flyer.
Yeah. Rebonjour.
Rebonjour. Donc, c'est juste pour savoir. Donc, vous êtes enfant de parents immigrants. Donc, vous savez sûrement que. C'est sûr que vous savez. Que moi, je trouve en tout cas que. Au Québec, on a encore cette mentalité que les immigrants, c'est sûr que c'est devenu mieux, mais que les immigrants sont moins avancés technologiquement, moins avancés culturellement et dans l'éducation que le Québec. Donc, moi, ma question, c'est est-ce que vous pensez qu'il y a une éventualité dans laquelle où les immigrants qui viennent d'un autre pays, qui ont fait des études dans leur pays, pourraient plus facilement continuer leur emploi ici? Parce que quand moi, mes parents étaient médecins en Algérie. Puis quand ils sont venus ici, le système qui est en place essaie de mettre plein de bâtons dans les roues des immigrants afin qu'ils ne puissent pas pratiquer alors qu'on est en manque. Donc, est-ce que vous pensez qu'il y a une éventualité dans laquelle ce fléau pourrait être réglé?
Deux choses dans ce que tu dis. Je vais répondre à ta question à la fin. La réponse est oui. Est-ce que je pense que ça pourrait être amélioré de beaucoup? Les gens viennent ici. Tu sais, le processus d'immigration, c'est pas un processus qui est facile. Pour la personne qui passe à travers, c'est sûr que c'est pas un processus qui est facile. Donc, tout ce qui est de ton pays, puis souvent tout ce qui est de ton pays d'origine, pas parce que tu n'aimes pas ton pays d'origine, mais tu sais, parce que la situation économique, la situation politique, peu importe, fait en sorte que tu le quittes. Et donc, déjà, si on était capable de faciliter la transition, déjà si on était capable de reconnaître les diplômes, puisque c'est à ça que tu fais référence quand tu parles des diplômes de médecin, ça, déjà, on franchirait déjà une grande étape, premièrement. Mais deuxièmement, dans les commentaires que tu fais au début, tu dis les immigrants les considèrent moins... Puis là, il faut enlever ça de notre tête, là. Il faut vraiment enlever ça de notre tête. Je veux dire, des gens qui arrivent ici, qui déménagent de pays, qui doivent s'adapter à une nouvelle culture, qui doivent s'adapter au froid, à la neige, on n'en a jamais vu, je veux dire, tout ça, ça nécessite beaucoup d'apprentissage aussi. C'est pas facile, c'est pas un processus qui est facile. Je sais, mes parents l'ont vécu, c'est pas un processus qui est facile. Et je pense pas qu'on devrait se dire ils sont moins bien éduqués que... Non, je pense pas qu'on devrait se dire ça. Je pense qu'ils amènent quelque chose. Ils doivent contribuer à la culture commune qu'on bâtit ensemble, mais ils amènent quelque chose aussi d'où ils viennent. Puis je pense que c'est comme ça qu'on devient plus riche. Il y a Amin Malouf, j'en ai parlé tout à l'heure, qui disait une citation que j'adore d'Amin Malouf, qui dit « La terre d'accueil n'est ni une page blanche, ni une page achevée. C'est une page en train de s'écrire. » Chacun contribue à écrire cette page-là. Et on l'écrit ensemble, cette page-là. Voilà. Merci de la question.
C'est un de mes étudiants, donc j'ai le droit de le taquiner, OK? Ali?
Deux autres questions ici. Il y en a qui n'ont pas posé de questions du tout dans le fond là-bas, là. Je sais pas, je vous dis ça de même.
This is kind of like a situational question now.
Oh, okay.
As you know, the vaccine code is required for non-essential activities like going to the restaurant, etc., but also for extracurricular activities at school like playing sports, being on the sports team. For high school students, or younger, 14 and less, you need your parents' permission to get medical care. Like, for example, if you want to get vaccinated, you need your parents' approval to get vaccinated. But the reality is that there are some parents against vaccination, and in the end, their kids suffer from it because they are privy of like doing activities that they want to do. For me, for example, we learned that at school, it's important for us to have a place to de-stress. And for some, sports is that answer, but they can't do sports, which could like deteriorate their mental health because they need to be vaccinated. Shouldn't like the age, I guess, for vaccination not be higher, but I mean, like, if you're not, like, for example, say, if you're under 14 and you're not vaccinated, like, you can still do the activities, because then, like, you get what I mean?
Yeah, I get what you mean. The parents are saying no, but the child or the person or the teenager would like to get vaccinated, and then they're stuck between a rock and a hard place. That's what it is, right?
Well, kind of, but my question, like, in this situation, for example, like, shouldn't the rule be not just for anybody, but, like, I mean, like, have an exception for younger kids that can't just decide to get medical care?
This is really, and I love answering questions, but this is really a good question for Horacio Arruda. This is a really good question for public health, because I wouldn't be like, you have to draw the line at some point in time. You have to draw the line, encourage people to get vaccinated. So what do we do in those situations? I don't know. I don't have a good answer for you. I really don't. Should we allow some exceptions in certain cases? But I wouldn't be the one to judge. I mean, I think the school can judge. I think the people that are closer to that teenager would judge. But it's hard for me to really answer specifically this question. Sorry, because I really like to answer questions, but it's very specific. Qu'est-ce que tu okay.
Follow-up? Yeah.
I don't know if it's follow-up. I think it's another question. There's another question afterwards.
Ma question, c'est un peu plus personnel. Are you where you want to be right now? Like, is this your goal? Like, where you're at right now, is this what you want to be doing?
But yes and no, in the sense that, so your question is, am I happy with my life right now? But that could be a question. I'm fine. So I made the decision to run into politics because I wanted to change the world, with my perspective, and I decided to run for the leadership of the Liberal Party because I really believe in a society where it's an inclusive society. It's in society where we recognize that we have a major, major change that's happening. It's called climate change, that we all want to fight for it. It's a society where I believe that people can achieve their fullest potential if we remove all those barriers that we have. That's why I decided to run to be the leader of the Liberal Party. So am I happy with the job I have today? Yes, I'm happy with the job I have today. Is my goal to be the leader of the Liberal Party and the leader of the opposition my whole life? No, because my goal is to be Premier of Quebec. So, but is it a goal that I'm going to feel good about and this is the goal of my life? No, because I think life is a journey. I think there are lots of things that I want to do in life. This is what I want to do now. I still have, I hope, many years ahead of me. So I see it as, again, something that I want to do now, that I'm excited about now, because I think there are a lot of changes happening in society and I want to participate in those changes. And we'll see where, well, life brings me afterwards, you know. But you know what? Like, peut-être un commentaire par rapport à ça. Sometimes, you know, sometimes people say, you know, Dominique, do you lead a balanced life, or do you feel that you're like, I don't have a balanced life. I have 3 children. I have a crazy job. Like, I work hours that are completely crazy. The real question that you have to ask yourself is, are you happy? Are you happy? Because if you're not happy, then do something else. Like this, you have to feel it inside of yourself. You have to say, okay, I get up in the morning and, you know, generally speaking, I'm happy. Well, that's good. Check. And you move on. Life is too short. So you have to be passionate about what you do. You have to find your path and not have to listen to people that tell you what you should be doing or should not be doing. But are you? It's a question I ask my kids all the time. Like, you know, like, what makes you happy? If it makes you happy, then try to do this, right? Ça devrait être l'étalon de mesure, cette question-là. Qu'est-ce qui t'anime? Qu'est-ce qui vient te chercher, là?
Okay, well, we have a surprise visit. Our Director General dropped in to listen to you to speak. So,
and he has a question for me?
He has a question for you.
Monsieur le Directeur Général.
Oui, bonjour, John McMahon, Director General. I could ask many questions. As you mentioned, We just completed the hearings on Bill 96, and you had mentioned previously in one of your responses that unfortunately it's a strategy of divisiveness. Clearly in those hearings, the English colleges were being blamed for the decline of French, particularly in Montreal, something we countered as English colleges. And you may be aware we made several recommendations to the projet de loi that we hope are taken seriously. But along the lines of that divisiveness, obviously that's a strategy that has been working because it resonates with many people in Quebec. And even blaming the English colleges resonated with several of our Francophone CEGEP colleagues. What is your strategy going in? We're going into an election year. What is your strategy as leader of the Quebec Liberal Party to counter that kind of populism and popularity that the current government is enjoying throughout Quebec on several fronts? What is their Achilles heel that you hope to go after in this next election to convince the majority of Quebecers that the Quebec Liberal Party should form the next government?
So it's good because I said I didn't want to talk too much about partisan politics and it's right into partisan politics. That's great. Perfect. So I believe that, so yes, the government is enjoying popularity right now. There's no question about that. And for about a year and a half, up until September, I would say, we were not even able to go on the ground. As the leader of the Liberal Party of Quebec, I haven't met my militants, my members, once physically, and it's going to happen at the end of November. So you can only imagine like how much work we have to do on the ground. Two things. I think that in order to fight against François Legault, we have to be on the ground constantly. I was in Bécomo and in Sept-Îles and in Mauricie and dans le Bas-Saint-Laurent. You have to be on the ground and understand what the real issues are. The real issues are on the ground. We don't have enough people in the different regions of Quebec. We're shutting down a number of small places are shutting down because their emergencies are closing, because they don't welcome enough people, etc. Those issues are close to people's heart. People are concerned about the fact that there's no real plan around climate change. We're talking a lot about climate change, but there's no real project happening. There's no vision for society as well as a whole. Every time we talk about the values of Quebec, François Legault goes and says, as je l'appelle le père autoproclamé de la nation québécoise, mais Quebecers think that way. No, you think Quebecers think that way. I think a lot of Quebecers don't think that way. And we have to really represent this alternative. So what I'm hoping to do in the next months is really to present a vision that we have for an inclusive Quebec, the vision that we have for combining economy and climate change in a real way with real results, not just saying our environment is important, but how are we going to fight the fact that 55% of our energy is coming from outside of Quebec and it's not renewable energy, with a clear path of accomplishing this. Focusing on issues that matter, mental health, les soins à domicile. These are the things that we want to bring forward. François Legault is presenting tonight at TVA at 5h. I'll be in the news at 7 tonight to bring out our proposals. So this is how you're going to do it. It's a fight on the ground constantly. But again, it also goes back to the values that you have. I value diversity. That's why the bill that they presented, Bill 2 around LGBTQ and what's happening with transgender people makes no sense to me. But it's in everything that they do, and I think that's what we have to demonstrate.
There was a question in the middle somewhere.
Merci. Il y a une question.
So you briefly mentioned it, but how do you think Quebec could be more green and fight the climate crisis?
Thank you for the question. 45% of the energy that we use, I'm just going to talk about energy, then we'll talk about the environment, because I think there's a lot of things that we need to do with water, a lot of work that we need to do with la forêt, forest in general. But essentially, 45% of what we use is hydroelectricity. 55% of our energy we bring from outside of Quebec, and it's oil or gas. So how do we get rid of that? What type of energy do we use in order to get rid of this and make sure that we are really a green society? That's where I think we need to focus on, because that's the only thing that's going to allow us to be really carbon neutral in 2050. Everything else is, we need to look after our water. We need to look after, again, our forests, see how we can use je sais pas comment on dit ça en anglais, là, les résidus forestiers. But fundamentally, if we keep using oil and gas, we're never going to get out of this situation. So different technologies that we have available to us today that I will be presenting in the next 2 months, where our energy is really going to be focused on. And I think Quebec could lead the way, but not only lead the way, also lead the rest of the provinces and be a beacon for the rest of the world. I really believe that we can be in that category. 50 years ago, we developed hydroelectricity. C'était déjà moderne à l'époque. Mais 50 ans plus tard, il faut vraiment qu'on passe à une autre étape qui doit être significative en matière de lutte au changement climatique. But you know what? Everything that we do has to be driven by the environment. So what I said is, as a premier, the changements climatiques would be under my direct leadership. So when we talk about immigration, when we talk about the economy, when we talk about health, when we talk about education, we always talk about the environment, because this is completely transversal. This is something that touches absolutely everything, and it has to be integrated in everything that we do. Mais c'est pas ce qu'on fait maintenant. Maintenant, il y a un ministre de l'Environnement, puis il y a 27 autres ministres. But we're never gonna fix it if we think about it that way. Never.
All right, folks, our time has drawn to an end. Avant qu'on se quitte, une dernière fois, ravi de vous avoir reçu, que vous ayez pris du temps de votre horaire chargé pour venir nous jaser aujourd'hui. Donc, merci beaucoup, Madame Anglade.
Merci. Merci beaucoup. Puis si vous avez des questions pour nous, if you have any question at all, please feel free to reach out, discuss. It was a pleasure answering all your questions. Merci beaucoup tout le monde pour votre présence aujourd'hui. Très apprécié. Merci.